Thank you and welcome to this session today. The Biochemical Society and Portland Press are pleased to welcome you to this webinar. It's part of the Biochemistry Focus webinar series. Topics in the series include different research areas in the biomolecular sciences, as well as practical sessions to support career development. Each webinar will give you the opportunity to ask questions via text, and we welcome suggestions for future topics and speakers to feature in future webinar series. To introduce myself very briefly, I'm Nigel Page. I'll be chairing today's session. I'm Associate Professor in the Biosciences at Kingston University and also National Teaching Fellow. And the topics we discuss today are very close to my heart. Today's webinar, entitled Bridging Gaps for Underrepresented Young Minds, and our invited speakers today will be addressing the challenges and opportunities in engaging underrepresented young people in STEM subjects. Before I introduce and hand over to the first speaker, I'd like to mention that questions will be taken at the end. So we've got two speakers today giving approximately 20-minute talks each, and questions will be taken at the end of the webinar. But please do send in your questions during the talk. So if you have any questions, please type it in the question box, which should be an image on your screen stating who the question is for, so which of the speakers you'd like to address it to, and also we'll try and answer as many of the questions as possible. Some of them we may have to summarize together. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker today. So our first speaker today is Dr. Oto-obong Inyang from Durham University. Otto is an assistant professor at the Department of Physics with an educational background that spans physics and engineering. Her research is centered on pedagogy approaches in physics education to support student learning. And she's also been involved in the integration of technological tools to create innovative teaching materials and dynamic laboratory experiences. Other projects she's been involved in include mentoring on the Pro Mentoring Scheme, the intersection between artificial intelligence and education, and also career literacy, and along with helping students translate academic skills into employability skills. So hand over to Otto.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so that's me. I'm Oto-obong from the Department of Physics here in Durham University. And today I'll be presenting on engagement of underrepresented young minds in STEM career. So yeah, so I think the overview, I think it's not moving us. Okay, all right. So this is the overview of today's presentation. So I'll start with the big picture with some statistics that we have on underrepresentation in the STEM career. And then I'll explore a little of motivations around this and what gaps are already existing, and then strategies on how we could bridge this gap, and then I'll finally conclude. So, all right, so starting with the statistics. So this is actually the statistics of that was gathered, I think, data before 2019. So there is no current data, so I'm using this. And this was published in 2020 by British Science Society. And it indicated that, it indicated that about 32.8 million people are in the workforce, but out of that, about 18% is actually in the STEM career. And it also shows some form of underrepresentation of specific groups across. For example, we have 27% of the STEM workforce actually being female, 11% of the STEM workforce actually being categorized as disabled, and about 12% of the STEM workforce to be related to ethnic minority group. So I'm going to be providing more details on that. In fact, the 11% of the STEM workers that are disabled is basically dominated by pure whites. So I think if you really want to dig into the other categories, it might be worth looking at the statement that was published by all party parliamentary group on diversity and inclusion in science, technology, engineering, and maths. Their statement is actually published here. So having a look at this, that in their classification, the STEM careers they actually highlighted was math, science, health, technology, and engineering. But the fact is that because the data sample size were quite small for the maths and science, so they were actually meshed. So the next couple of slides you'll be seeing will be merging information for both maths and science category. So for the engineering, having a look at that, that's people that are in the STEM field. This is the data from it for engineering. We can see that about less than 10% are actually representative of the minority ethnicity. And yeah, about more are pure white. And then looking at the health sector, as we know, the health sector is quite diverse, but from this data, it actually indicates that the percentage, we have less than 20% of representation of minority group in the STEM category there. But the rest of the workforce is quite, I think across board, you tend to see that there's still that underrepresentation in the ethnic categories. And then having a look at science and maths, because it was actually meshed together because of the data sample size, as I mentioned, you can see we have less than 12%, about 12% representation of ethnic minority. And for technology, we have about 16% of representation. And yeah, so this is what is actually existing. And this data is a representation before COVID. So things must have changed. And it's also a representation before the outburst of generative AI. So the industry, the generative AI industry. So I think this data will actually change slightly. But another data that I also had interest on was this, which is the ethnic diversity in the workforce that we have. So we have STEM and non-STEM. So the deep green is the STEM career and the non-STEM is the light green. And this category was actually a categorization based on the a classification based on a mathematical socioeconomic classification. And based on that classification, it was actually 8 category level, but the fact is that the last category is not included here because the last category is on about unemployed people. So we're not interested in that. But having a look at this representation is so indicative that in the lower category, the routine occupation and the semi-routine occupation, there is almost no representation of STEM careers there. And having a look at it, and across board, we can consistently see that STEM representation in the ethnic minority group is all really underrepresented across the category. But one interesting thing that I observed here was this particular bit, the higher managerial category. We tend to have more STEM representation there, career representation in the higher managerial position. This could, a couple of factors could be implied here. One could be some of the limitations experienced in the lower level is no longer experienced at the higher level. That's one of the things that could possibly be happening. And also this could also signal perseverance and consistency across getting. So and it gives hope that there's higher possibility higher up there. So, but the point is that at this point, we need to do something about this underrepresentation in the lower category, such that we could also achieve higher category at the later levels. So I think that is the reason why I actually presented this data. But with that, bearing that in mind, this makes us think, okay, what could possibly be the challenges that this lower category people could possibly be experiencing. So the next couple of slides, I will just be highlighting a couple of challenges that are being experienced in from underrepresented ethnic minority group in STEM workforce. So some of the challenge, one of it could be lack of role models and mentors. Yep. So I think that is one of the popular things that I've come across, that many underrepresented people that are in these categories, they don't seem to have people to as role models or people to ask questions. For example, if they're trying to develop their CV for an interview, or they need people to talk to, they need people to ask. You need someone to actually prepare for the interview. So I think having a mentor or a role model somewhere that you could present your CV, your cover letters and things like that, and they review it and give you feedback, it can be quite helpful. So lacking that could also pose as a challenge here. In other ways, sometimes you can also encounter some form of stereotypes and unconscious bias. But I think the thing I really want to highlight here is that you need to be mindful that you don't react when you see these things, because many times it's your reactions that will be seen and not necessarily what is happening. And apart from that, most institutions, they have a lineup of things or how to report cases of stereotypes and unconscious bias. So I think I would really encourage that in cases like this, one needs to be very mindful that you don't react, but rather respond in cases of that. And then moving on, imposter syndrome. Yeah, so that's another thing that limits, because when you feel, oh, I'm not sufficient for this post, or you wouldn't be able to apply for that position. So I think a couple of years, about 2 years ago in my department here in Durham, where the EDI team actually conducted a study on imposter syndrome. So what they did with ethical approval, they got approval. And during one of the board of studies that we had here, they actually presented the data to everyone. And it was so surprising to me to realize that my role models and the people that I see in the department, that's my professors that I admire the way they work, they also experience imposter syndrome. So it's quite important to be aware that everybody experiences imposter syndrome in one level or the other. But the fact is that you need to figure out how to manage imposter syndrome and ensure that it doesn't limit you, but rather you use it as a motivation to accomplish more. Okay, other things that, other challenges that could be encountered is socioeconomic factors. Yep. This can limit access, could be financial ones, it could be information-based, yeah, access to, for example, if you don't have internet available, like you wouldn't be able to, or a sufficient time to spend online to actually find the job you are interested in. I think those are the limiting. There are many things that could limit in that form. It could be financial, it could be resources, a library to go to, or things, yeah. So there are many socioeconomic factors that could limit that as well. So sometimes you could have limited exposure. That's for the younger ones. I think these are actually included for the younger ones, like A-level colleges and things like that. So for the younger ones, limited exposure to STEM education in the early years can also hinder this, because with that, it hinders in a way such that you wouldn't, the desire or excitement about STEM subject wouldn't be there. Yes, so I think, I know the government currently, they are trying to improve the level of science teachers in the secondary, and there's also a move recently to encourage career literacy in the secondary and colleges as well. So I think being able to envisage, okay, what STEM career would I be interested? What do I need for those STEM career? And embedding some of these careers in the subjects when they are taught, in the STEM subjects when they are taught, is quite helpful, in which it helps students to begin to build that framework, that visual framework of, okay, possible places to work. Another thing I will also highlight here is knowledge of available opportunities. Yeah. So I think somehow this also links back into the lack of role models, because yeah, I think many times in my own experience, most of the job opportunities that I've come across, someone actually told me, have you seen this? Yeah, and many times it's always my role models that tells me, okay, there's an advert here. You could have a look at jobs.ac.uk. That's for kind of research jobs. Yeah, so I think somebody being able to show you where possibly you could see these opportunities, or show you where you could find opportunities of development, is quite important. So that knowledge is lacking. So I think with all of this, I will attempt to see how we could bridge some of these gaps that is currently existing. So in the next couple of slides. So, right, so how could we bridge it? So I think one of it is like mentoring scheme. A couple of mentoring scheme in the past 2 years, most professional bodies are beginning to create a framework of mentorship. I think for the IEEE Society, the magnetism, I think the recent one that I saw recently is the IEEE mentoring scheme, Magnetism Society mentoring scheme. So they were advertising for mentors and mentees. So I think having a whole, if you come across any of such opportunities, it's quite useful to engage with some of those opportunities. And I've also come across the Pro Northeast. The Pro Northeast mentoring scheme. That's what I'm actually a mentee on it, and I have 2 mentors. I'm a mentor on it, and I have 2 mentees on it as well. So I think it's quite helpful to engage with mentoring scheme. And most institutions, some institutions also have a mentoring scheme, but usually sometimes it's you opting into it. So if you come across that, it's worth engaging with it. And also departments. In physics here, I think we have mentoring scheme for PhDs and early careers, and across board, every other person have someone that, like a line manager that you report to. So it doesn't only check what you're doing, but also the person offers opportunities, how you could, and if you have any career related questions or progression kind of questions, you could ask some of those questions. They are open to addressing most of those questions. Another bit of things to highlight here is deliberate alignment of academic skills to employability skills. I think that's one of the things that I've been looking at in the past 2 years here in the physics department. That I realized that many people are quite conscious of employability skills, but also less conscious of the academic skills, and that academic skills are reflective of their employability skills. I tend to come across students as well who tend to say, oh, I haven't had internship placements, I haven't had opportunities of summer placements, or I haven't had opportunities of working somewhere to use those experiences in an interview panel or anything. But I think the point here now is that most interviews or jobs, there's a job description, and that job description requires specific skills. And it is easier to align your academic skills into employability skills. Some of the questions, scenario questions, if you're asked questions, okay, how have you been able to work or solve a hard problem or working in teams? You've done that in academics. It is all right to use your academics experience to actually demonstrate these employability skills. So I think it's quite important that students, or you deliberately sit down and try to align most of your skills that you've acquired over the years in your academics towards the employability skills. All right, another bit is rising above imposter syndrome. I think when you realize that other people that have gone ahead as well are experiencing imposter syndrome, I think it would be encouraging sometimes. That for me, that's what I do, that most times when I go deep into imposter syndrome, I just realize, oh, hold on. And I remember that statistics. Once I remember that statistics, I tend to talk myself out of it again. Yeah, so I think the mere fact that everybody experiences imposter syndrome is quite encouraging, that, okay, you are not in it alone. It might be helpful to talk to someone about it, because by talking to someone about it, you relieve yourself the pressure of the anxiety as well. So it's useful to speak to someone about it. And their support system, if you're in an institution, there are usually support systems. So you could make use of some of those support systems to help in such situation. Yeah, I also included here managing disappointment in interviews. Outcome. Yeah, I think my last job, yeah, I think, yeah, one of the things that I realized, the current job I am in, I felt I wasn't qualified for the job, and I didn't want to apply for it. But my mentor actually told me, okay, what's the worst you can get from it? Is it not a no? Then why don't you try it? I tried it many times. Sometimes you don't want to apply for a job because you're afraid of the outcome, that the outcome might be negative. I feel it will take just a couple of days and you'll get over it. That's the point. But the fact is that it's worth trying. And by trying, to me, I will always say, if you align the skills and you have 75% of the skills, it is worth applying for that job. And also at the interview, what you need to do is to actually show that you can improve and show that you are willing to learn, which means that some of the skills that you don't have, the 25% remaining, you could learn it on the job and get that job implemented. So I think that's one of the things to always think about. If you don't need to have 100% of that, the skills required. Many times when you apply, you are the best candidate for that job. So it's worth trying rather than being afraid of the disappointment that might come out of the interview outcome. So be mindful of that. I think another bit of things that we can do to bridge this gap is career phase. So engaging with career phase. I'm going to provide further information on that in the next couple of slides. We also have outreach opportunities as well. So there are a lot of outreach opportunities out there. So I think one of the things that also helps is that when you're involved in this outreach, it's important you include it in your CV, on your CV, because that also represents some core skills that you have, that you are able to be involved in teamwork with other people. If you're the one developing or designing the outreach material, that means you can organize things as well. So organizational skills also is reflected in that. So if you're involved, there are many opportunities. Most of the institutions like Institute of Physics, Royal Society of Chemistry, Society of Biology, most of these institutions, they actually have outreach opportunities. So I think I'll highlight a couple of opportunities that are available. So first go about the career phase. So here if you go to this link, Youth Employment UK, so all the career fairs that will be hosted in the UK, they are hosted on that site. So you could tend to explore and check which one is closer to your location and then attend it. Many times just chatting with somebody and trying to understand the landscape, how people navigate into that career environment is quite useful. So it is in career phase that you will see people that could give you those details, apart from having mentors and role models that are already in the field that could give you that information. So you could have people there. Yeah, for the younger ones, I think career literacy is quite important. Integrating this career literacy into the curriculum is very helpful. Yeah, for example, yeah, at the end of a study, I also coordinate the physics into school model here in physics, which means that the students have a placement position in school. And a couple of visits that I've been doing, that I realized that the last 5 minutes of each class, that a couple of schools implement, they use it as career literacy in the curriculum. So they actually show someone in the career of the topic that they are addressing for that day. So I think that I saw that that was quite useful for younger people, just to be able to align science topics into specific careers out there, and also being aware of some of these careers would be useful. And then for outreach opportunities, there are many outreach opportunities. Most universities have an outreach team. So yeah, so I've showcased a couple here. I think a couple of times ago, I mentioned that it's in strange places that you tend to see some of these adverts. My first reference into a job was from an outreach opportunity. And from there, yeah, that was the first reference, because as an international student, I came here, I didn't have the framework, the physical people here to provide that reference. Most of my referees were abroad. So it's through the outreach that I did. I just reached out to the institution that I did the outreach with, and the person that I used to work, because it was a consistent visit, offered to provide the reference for me. That was quite helpful. Other outreach opportunity, British Science Week. There's always usually a lot of activity, if you click on that, in different locations within the UK. I think that happens around March, and it had already happened. The Faraday's Institute, they host outreaches, and also they provide the design resources that could be used for outreaches. I think their interest is actually energy. So things with regards to battery, solar panels, I think that's what they are interested in, and they roll that out into schools to encourage younger people as well. So that's an opportunity for one to register and be involved in that. We also have an into STEM program. Yep, that's placement position. I think for year 12 and above. Yep, so I think that's the placement, one way one can see placement positions for. And then also we have the Renaissance STEM outreach. Yeah, so they provide dedicated space that you could bring children in, and then they explore STEM subjects and associated careers. So there are many opportunities out there, but the fact is that one needs to know where these opportunities are and reach out to it. So I think, yeah, in conclusion, I think a couple of things just to highlight here is that from the statistics, there is a significant gap in the workforce in STEM-related field careers. And it's a place to bridge that gap, especially the ones in the lower cadet. A lot of us, we can, yeah, for the next generation, apart from being role models for the next generation, we can as well apply for those positions to begin to bridge that gap. And there are opportunities at the top level, yeah, which requires resilience and perseverance. Yeah, so there's a higher hope, a high up there. So I think it's worth pushing for it. And action to do might be take an inventory of your academic skills. Try to align most of it to employability skills, and see for each of those skills, do you have any examples, scenarios that you could respond to interview questions, giving life experience, life skills, experience that you've encountered. I will also encourage you look out for career development opportunities. Yeah, so it's quite useful to, like the outreach I've mentioned, and ask questions. Many people are quite happy to tell you their life story or their journey in their career. So it's what anyone you come by, if you're interested in that career field, talk to the person, and they'll respond to you. I think with this, I want to say thank you for your attention, and yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Otto. That's very inspiring, and you've touched on lots of different bases. So just a reminder, we have got 2 speakers at the current time, and we've also got a panel that you can put your questions in, and we'll be taking questions at the end of our second speakers. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our second speaker. So our second invited speaker today is Daniel Similaki. He's the founder of the Afro-Caribbean Commercial Science Network, and he's also an award-winning initiative created to address the lack of diverse representation in graduate and leadership roles across the industry. Daniel himself is a German-born Afro-European with a background in chemistry. He has a strong commitment to promoting diversity, equality and inclusion, especially in reference to the life science sector. He has a passion for social impact, which has led him to spend over 2 years on a medical outreach program across several African countries, which have deepened his commitment to empowering underrepresented communities. He's dedicated to making a lasting impact and continues to work extensively leading DE&I strategies and developing inclusive training programs to support organizations in creating more inclusive and representative workplaces. So I'm going to hand over to Daniel now for this section of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Hi everyone. Today I'll be talking about bridging the gaps for underrepresented minds in science. And before I start, I just really want to thank our sponsors, Avantor, the Royal Society of Chemistry and Imperial College London. And also I'd like to thank the Biochemical Society for forming this partnership that we currently have. So a brief introduction. So I'm the founder of the Afro-Caribbean Commercial Science Network, and I'm very keen on bridging the gap between diverse talent and the commercial and broader life science industry. By commercial, I mean roles that happen outside the lab, which are deemed as not traditional science roles. So I really want to bridge that gap between talent and that industry as well. And I'm very keen on really boosting that representation all across the life science sector, because I think without diversity, we're missing out on a lot, and it slows down the progress that we're making as an industry. So today's agenda, I would like to highlight a few things. So I want to identify some barriers affecting underrepresented youth in STEM. I'd like to recognize the impact of race, gender, and identity on STEM engagement. I would also like to explore inclusive strategies to foster belonging in STEM and reflect on their roles in bridging equity gaps. And then finally, look into access into practical tools and examples to support inclusive science outreach. So let's identify the barriers. So only 1 in 5 pupils leaving secondary school complete level 3 STEM qualifications. So that's BTech and A levels. There's a shortfall in STEM skills, which will cost the UK economy around 120 billion by 2030. And the disparities begin before post-16 and are shaped by various factors such as race, gender, and socioeconomic statuses. So who's actually left out? So firstly, Black Caribbean students are 2.5 less likely to take triple science education, which means that ultimately they're not able to study science and related subjects at university level, which then means they can't contribute to the life science industry and STEM as a whole. And girls from ethnic minority backgrounds face double exclusion due to race and gender, so kind of the intersectional experience. LGBTQ+, new, diverse, and disabled students also face unique barriers, and those can be based on some of the jobs not accommodating their specific needs, as well as some of the challenges that they may face along the way as they do their job. And the key point is that these aren't individual failings, it's actually a systemic thing, because individuals do bring their diverse perspective, but if the system isn't welcoming, they're not able to thrive, and they're also not welcoming because they'll face barriers essentially getting into those industries. So some of the strategies to address the gap. So here we've got the 3 Ps, and those stand for pathway, prior qualifications, and preferences. So the pathway, are students staying in education, and are they en route with STEM options? So that's the question that we need to ask ourselves, because if they are not in education and aren't getting the grades required to progress, that already eliminates them. So if a young person isn't even in the right post-16 pathway, STEM is not on the table, because, for example, myself, I studied chemistry. So if I didn't have the grades during my GCSEs, or if I didn't have interest in it, I wouldn't have been able to progress at university. Number 2, prior qualifications. Did they achieve the grades needed for STEM courses? So one thing that's really important is to highlight from an early age what pupils require to study specific STEM subjects. I remember myself when I was doing my GCSEs, I had a teacher that told me specifically that if you want to do chemistry, this is what you need to achieve. And that really helped me a lot. Qualifications do open doors, but not everyone has the same chance to earn the key. Some people may not have that support system to tell them, okay, to do this subject, you need to achieve these kind of grades. And then lastly, preferences. Do the young people see STEM as something for them? You know, I think, I mean, during my time at school, STEM wasn't the cool thing, science wasn't the cool thing, and chemistry in particular was not cool. I was often encouraged to do physical education because I was quite good at athletics, but I think it's really important for us to really emphasize that STEM is there, science is there, and these are specific career paths that you can undertake. And without those 3 Ps being addressed, and we may continue to see the gap that we're currently seeing when it comes to underrepresentation. So here I would like to highlight some key barriers by characteristics. So as mentioned, Black Caribbean pupils are 25% less likely to progress in STEM. Girls are 42% less likely than boys to study level 3 STEM, so BTech, A-levels. And then a really interesting point is that free school meals pupils are 44% less likely to access STEM pathways. And by free school meals, I mean individuals whose household income may not hit a specific threshold, and therefore the school provide them with free school meals, which then looks into kind of the effect that social mobility has on people's school attainment. And then intersectionality. So disadvantaged Black girls, they tend to face various multiple systemic barriers due to the fact that they are girls, their race, and various elements as well. So we've looked at the 3 Ps, and here I really want to look into how those 3 Ps interact with each other. So lower attainments, so prior qualifications, restrict post-16 options. So as I mentioned, if you're not achieving the grades that you require, let's say at GCSE level, you're less likely to be able to study A-level science subject or STEM subject, which then means that you can't pick that at university, and that then ultimately results in less diversity within the STEM sector. The lack of access to courses weakens student interest and confidence, so that's the preferences element of it. As mentioned before, if you are a young person and you don't have that keen interest, or you're not even aware of what a STEM career looks like, your interest will be reduced and your confidence will be lowered, because when your interest isn't there, you're more likely to not achieve good grades, which then means that you're not able to have that breadth of access that STEM subjects have, so you don't get to choose any of them later on in your educational journey. And then I would really like to highlight the self-reinforcing cycle. As this is a systemic issue, it will just continue to happen unless we tackle these things, unless we are looking into these things in depth and tackling them step by step. It will just be a thing that will continue, unfortunately, in our STEM industry. So here I'd like to highlight some elements of what we've done so far and what has worked. So one thing that's really helped is going to schools, being able to be a role model, be an example, answer some of those questions that some of the kids have. I mean, when I was growing up, I didn't have that. I didn't have those examples coming in, but I think it's really important. The one thing that we did do, or that we do, which does work, is going to schools, having life science days, asking, answering questions, showing them what they can possibly do. And often cases, we want to highlight that science goes beyond volcanoes, for example. One thing that I was stuck on when I was a kid was just thinking science was about volcanoes, but it's really important to highlight more of what STEM and science has to offer, because at some point you grow out of the idea of science is all about volcanoes, and you need to know what else there is that STEM has to offer. So school engagement is very key. And one thing that we also thought was important to do is do summer schools. And one that we have done is in Clapton, which may be considered a less privileged area. And the reason for that is because statistically, Black kids or Black students are less likely to achieve good GCSE grades. So what we thought is to tackle that gap is to bring in some role models, some allies, to teach those kids during those summer schools on specific science subjects to hopefully help them achieve better grades and have an interest in science for them to then want to potentially do it at BTech level or A levels and then ultimately progress at university. And research indicates that Black students in the UK are disproportionately less likely to achieve high grades in science subject compared to white peers. And that disparity then continues into higher education where, for example, once you have made it at university and you may want to study it at PhD level, that level of representation ultimately lowers. And then if you want to look into professors that are Black and ethnic minority, it's close to non-existent. So one thing that we really focus on, which has worked, is summer schools. And then here's really about a focus on post-16 and higher education. So we've collaborated with our bronze sponsor, Imperial College London, to really welcome some people from Black and ethnic minorities who come from underprivileged background to spend a day there, to take a tour of the university, see what it's like to be a student at Imperial College London, see what a day in life entails, and also really give them an insight into what a career could look like after you've studied a STEM subject or a science subject. And that's really helped us a lot because off the back of that, we've been able to provide them with further mentorship, connect them with other individuals who are allies and who are role models to them, essentially. And then here's some of the testimonials that we have from people who we have been able to engage with. So here we have this gentleman who was in the previous slide. We were able to get him to spend a day at Imperial College, understand what it is like to be a student and what the day in the life is as a chemist. And we were able to get him on board, and off the back of that, he was able to secure a placement in which he was able to interact with other PhD students and also have some mentors who are there to guide him through the journey. And one thing that's really helped is that off the back of that, he actually wants to have a career in science, and talented individuals that are in the community but just wasn't initially sure of what he wanted to do. Here I just really want to talk about the importance of having a healthy pipeline of talent. And one of the things I would like to highlight is the Missing Elements report, which was done by our bronze sponsor, the Royal Society of Chemistry, who have found that 4.9% of undergraduate chemistry students are Black. This then falls to 1.4% when it comes to PhD level, and then it turns to almost non-existent when it comes to chemistry professors. The reason why I'm highlighting that is because that issue is not just in the chemical world, it's actually all across the board. But it's just that the Royal Society of Chemistry have looked deeper into this and have found these findings. So one thing I'd like to highlight is that there is a gap. We need to work on the pipeline. We need to really have meaningful figures so that we can measure this, because as they say, what gets measured gets done. And I think this kind of approach can help us in really forming that healthy pipeline so we can have a more diverse pipeline of individuals contributing to the STEM industry. And it's not just about attracting talent. We have to retain them. As shown in the previous example, the testimonial is about one, attracting them, and then also retaining them, and then allowing them to thrive within the industry. You know, it's not just about getting them in there, it's about letting them have a thriving career within them in the industry, essentially. Here's another one, another example of where we were able to retain a student. This was actually at the Kingston University, who we have collaborated with, in which we had a careers event where we spoke about science, life science, as well as commercial science, the worlds where it's not lab-based. And we were able to meet this amazing person, Chimdi, and we really broke down what the life science industry has to offer. So it has the traditional lab-based roles, but also has a commercial world. And she wasn't sure about which career path she wanted to undertake. She had various different ideas. I mean, as you know, in careers fairs, often cases we see the consulting companies, we see finance companies as well. But when it comes to science, we're a bit thin when it comes to appearance at careers fairs, and we were able to, essentially broaden her awareness of what life science has to offer. Off the back of that, she then applied for a role which focused on sales and marketing within the medical equipment company, and she was able to secure that role. And ever since then, she said she wanted to contribute further to the life science industry. And that's an example of how you can retain talents by raising awareness, providing support, and being there with them once they've even secured a role, because you still need a healthy network of individuals to support you once you've gotten a role to navigate the industry. And who are we at the ACCSN? So we believe in boosting the Black and ethnic minority representation, and we really want to make the industry a place that people are attracted to, and they're found within, they're welcomed into, and they feel like they actually belong within the industry. And that's really what I mentioned before, is attracting, raising awareness, getting them into the industry, and once they get into the industry, allowing them to thrive into not just entry roles, but mid-level and senior level roles, which we're currently not seeing often. What works? I think what's really important is to have effective interventions, have culturally relevant teaching and role models. So I think the teaching needs to be a bit more relevant to the diversity of our society today. Targeted STEM schools, which has worked before as well, and really making sure that the pathways are clear and there's flexibility in entry requirements, knowing that various individuals have different strengths, having community and school partnerships, and mentoring and networking platforms such as the ACCSN. Your role. I think it's really important for you to reflect based on where you are currently, whether it's a company, whether it's an educational institution, wherever you are. Think about the invisible barriers that are in your settings, and then think about kind of what can you do to act on this. Maybe build inclusive pathways and challenge stereotypes, you know, and also elevate diverse voices, because in often cases minorities may not feel like speaking out due to imposter syndrome or due to the fear of being judged. And then I think it's really important to partner. You know, a lot of organizations, educational institutions do try their best to focus on issues internally, but I think it's really important to also collaborate to bring about change with external partners such as us, the ACCSN, where we really use our knowledge and also our past collaboration to really tackle some of the issues that you may be facing. And yeah, the question is, what's one change you can make in your outreach, teaching, or organization in Q2, so the second quarter of 2025? And yeah, no, I'd like to thank you all for listening. As you can see, there's a barcode there, and that will allow you to join the community. So if you're someone that's interested in what we're currently doing, or have more questions, or want to get involved as maybe a mentor, or your organization wants to collaborate with us to bring about change, feel free to scan the barcode, and you can also reach out to myself, I'm Daniel Similaki, or type in. Once again, Ivantor, the Royal Society of Chemistry, and Imperial College London for the ongoing support since we've been around. So no, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much to both Daniel and also Otto as well. I think we've just got about 5 minutes for questions, and I've got some questions coming in for both Otto and Daniel, and I realise the importance of, you know, opening debate on this, even though there are opportunities to continue afterwards. So I'm just going to, maybe I'm going to group these together so that you can just tackle them together rather than go through. So I did have one question, and it was for Otto, but I think it's just as valuable, relevant to Daniel. Is it worth targeting parents, particularly at early academic levels, to encourage engagement with these opportunities? And if so, not just with the students, but is it worth creating networks for those parents to share ideas and resources? Is one coming in, so just hold that one. Another one coming in, this was to Daniel, but again, it could be relevant to both of you. What role do you think social media plays in creating excitement and engagement? And then there's another one just coming now to Daniel about outreach for years 7 and 9 to keep interest from younger students, particularly when they're picking triple science. But I know Otto also discussed that as well. So yeah, one about the role of parents, one about the role of social media, and one about outreach at 7 and 9. I don't know whichever wants to maybe take that first, but I think they can both share the responses.
Also, feel free to go first.
All right. Okay, maybe I should go with the role of parents. Yeah. I think that's one of the things the IOP is actually interested in, creating opportunities that parents and younger ones are involved in career-oriented kind of things. So yeah, so I think that would be quite helpful, involving parents in some of the career, and also provided that community that they can ask questions, because some of the parents as well, especially students that are first generation, yeah, they tend to not to have parents that could actually advise in the right direction because they don't know. So it still boils down to knowledge, what knowledge or information you have available. Yeah, so I think that would be a quite helpful opportunity for parents to speak, to meet other people to talk about their children. Yeah.
Okay. I will tackle the social media question. I think social media plays a big role. I mean, social media has, if you're on social media, there are various different career paths that are really being highlighted at the moment. One of them could be, let's say, for example, the idea of one thing that's really become popular, let's say, is real estate. A lot of people are saying real estate is a place to go, or finance is a place to go. I think when it comes to STEM, I think we are still kind of falling behind, because we're not showing the elements that are quite exciting to young people. And I think it's really important to show them the good sides, as well as the challenges, because, for example, in areas such as finance, people do say that it's a lot of hard work, but the rewards are amazing. I think it's really important for us to also highlight the good sides of science or STEM and the kind of challenges, so that people can prepare themselves mentally. And that's one thing that we have done with ACCSN. We've done a few kind of vlogs, kind of showing them this is the day in the life of someone that works in commercial science, and these are the skills that you require, whether it's soft skills and hard skills, for them to really envisage themselves whether they could do it or not. So I think social media is really important. Some of us may feel too old to be, let's say, on TikTok, but that's where the young people are. Maybe we need to think about what can we do to engage the younger crowd on TikTok, or on Instagram or on Twitter. But one thing I've realized based on my personal experience is that since launching the ACCSN, and we're in our 3rd year now, was that when we came about and we appeared on LinkedIn, we were able to grow our community fairly fast. So we grew it to 4,000 in 2 years. It's just about really raising that awareness, because I feel like sometimes we are a bit slower than other industries, such as, let's say, tech. They are constantly on social media sharing things, whereas us in STEM sometimes may not be as fast moving, and which then ultimately makes it less exciting. And then I think when it comes to engaging young people, we are consciously making an effort to engage young people, because they may have the dream of, let's say, being a footballer, but it's really important for them to also know other career paths of what else can they do. It's really about bringing them into the lab, for example, letting them get hands-on experience, and then for them to have STEM as an option. We're not saying that will guarantee them ending up in STEM, but it's really important to sow the seed early. If you can let them know early that, okay, these are the potential career paths you can undertake. This is what it looks like to be in the laboratory. This is what you may want to do later on. Maybe one interesting thing, for example, was in school, one kid asked me, can I have my own lab? And my answer was, yes, you can, but you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to have lab experience, and then you could potentially have your own lab, which then turns into entrepreneurship. So it's really important to highlight to the kids from early on this is what you can do. And one thing that we are doing, for example, is we've organized to various universities to spend a day there, have hands-on experience, to do some safe lab experiments, and then do various talks. And those things have helped us in the past. So I think it's really important to get the young people on board very early.
I think to add to the
that we're quite probably up to time now, and I'm sure the debate could go on, but I'm aware that we're up to time. So I'd like to just thank everyone for attending, and particular thanks to Daniel and Otto. They've been really inspiring, and I'm sure that, I know, Daniel, you had some contact details, and maybe Otto the same. I think you had some contact details, and encourage you to continue the discussion. And also the Biochemstock has got their tags on Blue Sky and X as well, if anyone wants to carry on for that. Moving forward with the future, if anyone does have any future suggestions for topics and speakers to feature in the next biochemistry focus web series, then please do get in touch. And there's more information on the www.biochemistry.org, the main Biochemical Society website. And that's where you'll also find details of up-and-coming webinars, but there's also details, and I think this one's also recorded as well, so you can catch up on anything that you may have missed. And finally, you may already be an enthusiastic member of the Biochemical Society, but if you're not, then please do consider joining. There's lots of different advantages, and just for myself, I've greatly benefited over the years from being able to not only from the society, but also to be able to contribute to the society as well through various opportunities. And these include, I've been, for instance, a local ambassador, and I know there's a new round for those roles coming up, and there's going to be advertising for that. Also committee members. The society also does supportive grants for diversity initiatives. So there is a diversity in science grant available, and I've applied for that myself, and that's something really great to do as well. And I know there's lots of other opportunities, and particularly around the focus of this meeting here, I particularly enjoyed a lot of the learning and teaching conferences that the society has laid on. So I'd just like to do a final thank you to everyone, and a goodbye. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone.